What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Heel Deal Podcast. We're happy to bring you Season 2 with your hosts, Ben and Zach.
Hey guys, what's up?
This is going to be an awesome season, guys. We're ramping up to football season. We got basketball season in the horizon. Zach, you excited?
Very excited, man. It's right around the corner now.
Yeah, man. I don't know about you, but I've been looking forward to this episode for a while. This is our 2019-2020 football season total overview, total preview. We're going to get into some good stuff here today, Zach.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm excited to talk about it, man. This is a very highly anticipated season, so let's start getting into it.
Exactly. We got the first season of the return of Mac Brown. So what we're gonna do this episode, guys, is just go game by game, all 12 games. Cross our fingers. Hopefully we have a 13th there late in the season, right, Zach?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And so we'll go game by game, and we're gonna do like a full game episode as the season progresses. So we're not gonna get too deep into each team, but kind of give you an overview of the things that Zach and I are thinking, things we're seeing, what maybe to expect as the season goes on. And then at the end of the episode, Zach and I are gonna give our highly educated, fully informed prediction of the Tar Heels 2019 record. You ready, Zach?
You better be careful with that, Ben, because after our Final Four predictions back in March, I don't know if anybody's going to want to hear our educated opinions.
I know. If that one guy on YouTube is still listening to us, like, we're sorry for putting in 3 ACC teams, man.
We
really
put
sorry.
in 4 ACC teams, didn't we, at one point?
That might have been you, man. You had like Florida State. You had Tech in there. Maybe you did have 4.
All right. Well, anyway, let's just get into it.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, our first game at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte against USC, the University of South Carolina. Zach, how about that?
Well, obviously it's a big matchup. Getting a chance to play in Charlotte at Bank of America is a big game. We've played this game against South Carolina before. We haven't had much luck against them, but we're hoping to change that narrative this year. But it's going to be tough, Ben. Coming out of the gates with an SEC team is never an easy task, and this is going to be one of Will Muschamp being South Carolina's head coach. This is going to be one of his best rosters, if not his best roster that he's had in his tenure at South Carolina. So it's going to take a heck of a game from us to get out of there with a win in our first game.
Yeah, I mean, South Carolina, a lot of people are really high on them this season, especially considering they went like 7-6 in the SEC East last season. Just being in the SEC, the types of teams that they play. And they have a lot of their returning guys too. I think they really only lost Deebo Samuel to the pros. So they're like a fully locked and loaded roster. This is a hard game for Mac Brown's first game back.
Oh, I know. You couldn't ask for a tougher one to start. And yeah, you're right. Deebo Samuel, he's one of the big ones that they lost. But they have their starting quarterback and Jake Bentley back. They've got a lot of really good defensive players. The defense is supposed to be loaded. So, and South Carolina, they have the toughest schedule in the entire country, in my opinion. So they're looking at this first game as one that they have to have because they play the likes of Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, Florida, Clemson, all those.
Yeah, I mean, when you play in the SEC like that, you almost any non-conference game is a must-win game. But there's reason for optimism for the Heels, but there's also reason for some pessimism. Like Tar Heels are 1-11 in season openers against Power 5 conferences, or Power 5 conference opponents over the last like 2 decades. That just doesn't bode too well for us.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. So, yeah, I mean, there's not, I'm not going to write them off and say this is one that we're going to be severe underdogs in this one, and this is going to take a miracle for us to win. But I do think that they will be favored, and I think they should be. But that doesn't mean that we can't go in there and get us a win to, bring out this exciting season in the way that we've all wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. Just being this first game, the first game of like a new coach's tenure, it's for morale, for fans and players alike, it's going to be so important to at least show something promising, if not go home with the victory, right?
Right, yeah. If we don't win, we need to at least show that we can compete at that level. And I think we'll at least do that. We'll talk more about, whether or not we think we're going to win this game or not later on. But, yeah, I definitely think we need to have a good game at least so for morale of the fans and the players.
Yeah, and just for any of the fans who might be at that game, Zach and I got our tickets. We'll see you guys up in the nosebleeds.
Yeah, we'll be up there.
Yep, yep. All right, let's move on. So, our second game, which is our home opener, it's a night game. So I know you're excited for that, Zach. But talk to me about Miami.
Yeah, Miami will be a lot of fun. You were talking about morale, and this will be a huge one. You know, regardless of what happens with South Carolina, Ben, this Miami game being a night game, being at home, first game since at home since Mac's been back, all this hype and all this stuff. This one's going to be a huge game, no matter what happens before it. So, and it sucks that it's against Miami because they really could whoop us if we're not careful. And looking at their returning roster, they do have a new head coach in Manny Diaz, so you always have to, put a question mark beside that because it is a new system a little bit. It's a little bit different than what they had under Mark Richt, but they still have a lot of talent. I guess a good thing for us as Tar Heel fans is that they are going through a quarterback battle a lot similar to what we are right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like objectively compared to the season before last, like Miami had a real down season last year. 7-6. What they got like walloped by LSU that first week. But even in a down season for Miami, they just thumped us on Thursday night. I remember watching that on TV with you, and that was just the most like that became such a joke by the second half because we were getting our butts kicked so bad.
Oh yeah, it was a bad one. And traditionally, Ben, even in recent years when Miami started to look like, Miami again of the 90s and stuff at different points, we've traditionally played them pretty tough. I remember I think it was in it wasn't last year, but the year before that, we played them in Chapel Hill and they were, I think top 10 and we were, all terrible that year due to injuries and we only lost by like 4 or 5 points. And the year before that, I think we beat them, and then the year before that, I know we beat them. So we've competed with them regardless of the fact that they've had more talent than us in recent years.
Yeah, I mean we're 2-3 against them in our last 5 games, so it's
Okay.
respectable. It's not like they've walloped us
Right.
the last 5 meetings, but again, like home opener, night games, nationally televised, we just can't do what we did. We played them last season when we had like 6 turnovers, lost 47-10.
Yeah.
Um, if they do that, that's just oh gosh, I don't even want to know what that's going to do for fan morale, team morale. Just we got to hope for something here.
Yeah, I don't think that'll happen. I pray that that doesn't happen. But you're right. If something like that were to take place, given all this hype and it being a night game and everything, there would be some serious issues in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, yep, exactly. All right, let's move on. So then, week 3, we got Wake Forest in Winston-Salem. So just a little hop, skip, and a jump from Chapel Hill. That's actually a Friday night game, I think. It's gonna feel like a high school game.
It's a Thursday, I believe. But
No, it got moved. It recently got
oh,
moved from
okay.
Thursday night to Friday night.
Oh, well, that's good. I mean, that's one more day. I was getting ready to talk about how it's going to be tough, because those first 2 games we play are both going to be good teams, and Wake Forest is a good team as well. Plus, it was going to be a short week on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that was the big thing. The other thing I want to point out here, Ben, about Wake Forest, and this is something I learned recently that I think a lot of people will find this interesting. Although Wake Forest is an ACC team, this game against them this particular season is not an ACC game for us.
Huh.
And I know that seems odd, but it was selected as one of the ones that the coaches can. You know how in non-conference games the coaches always select the schools select which ones they want to play. You get more say in that. Conference games they're in stone, years in advance. Wake Forest was one that we selected each other. Although we're in the conference, Mac and the coaching staff and the athletic director for them too, and all that stuff. We decided to have this game as one of our non-conference games. Although that's a little bit of a fake way of saying it because it is a conference game.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing right now that so we got the one scheduled for this season, so the next non-conference game against Wake Forest is going to be 2021. So you're right.
Yep. So I mean, I thought that was kind of interesting, but to quickly glaze over what they bring as a football team, the big thing about Wake Forest is that they returned their running back on offense, and last year he had over 1,000 yards rushing. So right off the bat, when you're looking at them, that's going to be a team that we're going to have to really hope our defensive line and linebackers have learned a lot in the summer and spring because we're going to need it that night.
Yeah, and I mean at times last season, like we had some strong run defense. So I feel like as long as we can contain that guy, Cade Carney, we have a
Yeah.
chance. Wake Forest is one of those teams, like, they could easily come out and have a strong game and beat us, but we could also do the same. That's one of the more confident games I'm feeling for next season.
Yeah, for sure. You're right. Their season could go a lot of different directions, and I think our season could do the same thing. So that'll definitely be a crucial game for both teams early in the season.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. All right, let's move on to the next one. Then our neighbors to the west, we got Appalachian State. So
Yeah,
I didn't
the big
actually,
one.
dude. Yeah, exactly. I didn't even realize that. So UNC and App State, like, we're really not too far apart from each other, but we've only faced each other one time, and that was in 1940.
I did not know that. That's a very interesting stat.
Yeah, right. You'd think that we'd at least play them like once or twice a decade. They're right there,
Right.
but yeah, no, this team is no joke, especially with what they did or almost did with number 9 Penn State last year.
Oh,
They
I
were a
know.
fun team to watch.
They were flat out good. I hate to say it, I'm not a huge fan of App State, but they
Mhm.
were flat out good last year. And you're right, bringing up the Penn State game. I thought that was week one of the season, and they were, basically a minute of football away from beating them in Pennsylvania. So
Mhm.
I mean that would have been a huge boost. But yeah, App State this upcoming year, obviously the big storyline around their team this year, Ben, is that they lost their head coach.
Yeah,
And
I mean, without I just they're not like a Power Five conference opponent. Like, are they going to be able to bounce back without Satterfield, especially after following an 11-2 season? I just don't see it personally.
that's the question. I honestly don't see an 11-2 year out of them by any means. I could see a 9-4 or 8-5 year out of them, to be honest with you though. I mean, they bring back pretty much everybody. I mean, for example, they're bringing back 7 of their 8 wide receivers. And
Jeez.
I mean, and they're bringing back their starting quarterbacks. I mean, they're keeping that nucleus of the offensive production together despite the coaching change. So unless the coach comes in there and does something that just really disrupts their progress, I think they'll still be very competitive, and they will compete with us in this game, which is, something that may not have happened, 10, 15 years ago when they weren't even Division One. But even when they were Division Two, back when they beat Michigan, do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, they may have been Division One Double A, but they still weren't in the Sun Belt like they are now at the Division One level. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
I
mean,
think they were FCS that year,
okay,
so they were still
okay,
Division One, but
right.
football championship. I can't even remember what FCS stands for.
Yeah, but yeah, basically the point is that even whenever they weren't in a conference that was full Division One, they still were competing with people that not many people thought they should have.
Yeah, I mean, when you put it like that, like, I guess App State really does have a culture of winning, especially in the Sun Belt. Like, they went 11-2, and one of their 2 losses was against Penn State, and that was like, you almost expect them to lose that, and they almost beat them in overtime. So this is
Yeah.
not a team that's used to losing by any means. So it might not be as easy as it may seem on paper.
No, no, and I don't even think it seems easy on paper. I
Hmm.
mean, if we don't go into this game expecting for a dogfight, then we're probably going to get beaten, and that would be
Yeah,
flat out embarrassing.
yeah, exactly. And I mean that comes
Because
down to just the coaching to prepare the players and not get them too overconfident.
Yeah, because they'll be excited to play us. They would want nothing more than to go into Chapel Hill and beat us there. I mean, that would be the dream of their season. So we
Hmm.
just got to be ready for that.
Yep, exactly. But why don't we move on to the big whammy?
The big
We might,
whammy. Yeah.
yeah, we might need to have a beer or two before this game just to numb the pain that may be the our game against number 1 Clemson, and like,
Yeah.
barring something miraculous, like they'll be number 1 when we face them too. What, 15-0
Yeah, man.
last season? Beat Alabama
Yeah.
44-16 to win the national championship. It's gonna be
Yeah.
cool to just like take the same field as them.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I mean, they shellacked everybody last year essentially. I mean, I think they had one big scare being Syracuse, and outside of that, they beat everybody pretty badly. I mean, especially Alabama. I remember watching that game just thinking, I cannot believe this, because I was expecting it to be a close game like most people were. But if it was a blowout, I was almost sure it would have been the other way.
Yeah,
But
no, I
they
totally I
just
totally
they
agree
just
with you.
destroyed Alabama. They just
Yeah.
destroyed them. But yeah, I mean, you hit it right on the head, saying we're going to need to drink some beer before that one. I mean, we might need to just watch that one on TV, Ben, because it's going to be tough. It's going to be a wild card to say the least. I mean, they have Trevor Lawrence back, who, as a true freshman, would have probably, if it was allowed, have been drafted based off skill in the top 15 in this past year's draft. And
Oh, yeah,
then
100%.
they also have T. Higgins, the wide receiver, who's going to be a first or second round pick this upcoming draft, probably a first round pick. Travis Etienne, the running back. I mean, you can just go down the line, and
Yeah.
they are just loaded.
So yeah, basically what I'm anticipating is like they're gonna destroy us on the offensive side of the ball. They're gonna just run our defense into the ground. I feel like the only way we have any chance is to just hope that like we can win some sort of like just firefight. Like we can get our offense going because like a lot of their key losses were on their defensive line. They lost like Clelin Ferrell, they lost Christian Wilkins, both went in the first round of the draft. Um, they obviously have
Austin
the
Bryant too. Yep.
yeah, exactly. They have the tanks that can just they just feed into the offense or the defensive line. Like these guys get drafted, new guys step up, and they're just as dominant. But man, all we can hope for is a little bit of growing pain on their defensive end, and that can get something going on our offensive end.
Yeah, and it's not completely irrational for us to think that we can get into a firefight with Clemson, because all their defense will be extremely talented and very well coached. They are a little bit young this year. You touched on the big departures they've had due to the NFL draft, but I mean, the fact of the matter is they will be young in a lot of positions, especially on that defensive line. So if our offensive line is healthy and playing well, I could see us being able to score on Clemson. But I think you're also completely right saying that they're probably going to have 600 total yards of offense that night against us. So it will definitely have to be a shootout, because we're not going to keep them off the board for long. I just don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really excited to see, like when we do the full episode on this game to see like how the season is going. That's going to give us a lot more of an informed view on this game. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. We'll be able to tell if we really match up or not.
exactly, exactly. Hopefully we'll have some sort of optimism. But why don't we move on to the next one? We got
Yep.
Georgia Tech. We lost to them last year, 38-28. But I think they have a new coach too, and I think they're changing up their option-based offense.
They are. You're right. And the new coach is Jeff Collins, and he is looking to run a NFL spread type system, which to me is kind of funny because, I mean, Ben, can you think of two offenses that would be more different? I mean, you've got like the wishbone triple option that they were running for forever, and then now they're going to use that same personnel to try to run an NFL pro style offense with a lot of passing. So, I mean, I don't know how that's going to go for, but those wide receivers that were already at Georgia that thought they were committing there just to block and stuff like that, I mean, they're going to have a lot bigger of a role now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just obviously their coaching staff and their administration know what they're doing, but I mean, you think of the option offense, you think of Georgia Tech, so it's going to be really interesting to see. I foresee them having a ton of growing pains, which bodes well for UNC in this game.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we do have to put that one on the road, so it does add an element to it that can make it harder on us, depending on how we're doing at that time. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a situation for Georgia Tech where it's going to take them a while to get to where they're running that offense the way this new coach wants to. And there will be growing pains, like you said. I think this is. I'll go ahead and say I think this is one that we have got to plan on getting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are just a few of the games in this schedule that are kind of like they're realistic wins and they're kind of must wins if we want to make a bowl game. So Georgia Tech is definitely one of
Yeah,
those. All right, well
for
let's
sure.
move on. We got Virginia Tech, man. That that Virginia Tech game last year, that was tough. I was so happy for like 95% of that game, and then we go ahead and fumble on the 2 yard line. They march 98 yards down the field in 18 plays and score a touchdown to win. Man, they just took the air out of the stadium.
Yeah, and then convert the 2 point conversion too, all coming right at our student section, which, by the way, was actually pretty lively that night. I mean, I had a lot of fun at that game. But you're
Yeah,
right. I
did
mean, they
you
took our
remember
heart out, and
I caught that field goal kick?
yeah, yeah, you did. I remember that now. Yeah. Yeah, that was fun. That was funny. But yeah, Virginia Tech. I mean, that game last year was obviously probably the most disappointing ending to any of our games because I mean we had it at so many different times. There's so many things that had to happen for them to win that game, and there's so many things that we had to do wrong in order to allow that to be the outcome. And it happened that way, and we have to move on from it. But this year, it's going to be even tougher because not only do we have to go on the road to play them, but they also are going to have a year like all their defensive players last year that were having issues because of the youth and they were really young. They're all going to be a year older. So not only are we playing them at their place, which is a very tough venue to play at, but we also have to play a defense that's going to be thriving most likely. Now, offensively, they're always a question mark, and they're going to be a big question mark this year because Josh Jackson, their quarterback last year, is now transferring. So now this Ryan Willis guy that we saw as the backup in the game that we were attending last year is now going to be their number one guy. So I don't know how he'll do, and I don't know how the offense will do, but I can assure you this Virginia Tech defense will be back to normal, being probably top three in the ACC.
Yeah, no, this is by no means like an easy game at all. And I mean, if Willis has a good season, like I could see Virginia Tech being like a really good team or in the Coastal Division. I think they could have a great season.
Yeah, the question with them has been as always. It's been like this, even when Frank Beamer was there. It's basically been like this, with the exception of the Michael Vick season where they went to the championship because they actually had an offense that year. The question with Virginia Tech is always, can the offense do anything to help the defense? And if they can, like you said, they're going to have a really good year. But if it can't, then they're just going to be the average 6-6, 7-5, kind of team that no one really, has much to say about other than, oh, well, Virginia Tech made another bowl game. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see how their season goes leading up to that game. But let's move on. We got Duke. We got them in Kenan Stadium this year. I was at that game last year over at Duke, and man, Daniel Jones. I think he ran and passed for 547 yards. He was just unstoppable. We made it close in the end, but we were really outclassed by that kind of overachieving Duke team. What are your thoughts on this next season's game?
Well, I mean, obviously Daniel Jones is not there anymore, so that's the big thing, and that's going to be a big help for us and anyone who has to play Duke this year because he was really good last year. I didn't think he was caliber to get drafted in the top 10 like he did, but that's a different subject. Duke this year, the way Duke's defense never really shows me much. I mean, even last year, Ben, you were at the game, you saw we didn't have too much trouble scoring on them. Um, I mean, I know early on we scored a lot of points in the first half, and it was basically tied.
Yeah. I mean, it was there was literally like we were done by that point in the season. I think the fans and the players knew it, but Duke is a good program. Their coach Cutcliffe, he knows that program well. He's going into his 12th season. I don't think they're going to be a gimme game by any means.
No, they won't be. And you're right. As long as he's there and stuff, and he's a great quarterback coach, we know that very well. His ties go back as far as Peyton Manning. So I mean, this guy has been helping quarterbacks along the way for a while. So I mean, whoever they do have come in, I'm not sure who it'll be. I think it might be Quentin Harris. I think that's who the guy is going to be this year, but that's just me speculating. But anyway, I mean, he'll have an okay season, but I definitely think this is a game that we can win and we should win.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well then next week, November 2nd, we got Virginia. That's going to be at home too. What are your thoughts on that game?
Well, Virginia is supposed to be really good this year. I don't know if you would agree with that, but based off what I see, I think they're going to be one of the better teams on our side of the ACC this year. They're returning a lot of people. They're supposed to have a loaded defense in particular. They finished third last year in ACC scoring defense, and they're basically getting that whole unit back, plus their quarterback. And, I think honestly they'll be ranked in the top 25 when the first AP poll comes out.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Well, just especially them returning Bryce Perkins. He was a weapon
Yeah.
on their offensive side of the ball last year, and he gave us some problems in our game. But Yeah, no, Virginia is a good team, and that's like kind of a noticeable trend. We play in a really good division of football, like or a conference of football. I mean, the ACC, there are barely any gimme games in this. A lot of stuff's gonna
I
have to
know.
go our way, and
Yep.
Virginia's
Uh,
no different. Like especially last year, the game was within reach, but just like so many of those games last season, I mean, they just slipped through our fingers.
Yeah, we just didn't have the killer instinct to get through those tough road games last year, really tough home games either. So I'm hoping that'll be different this year. But I think this could be a close game for us if we play well, but they could also beat us pretty good if we're not bringing our A game because I think they're going to be a really good team.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. So excited for that one too. All right, the next week we got one of the two teams we beat last year, the only FBS team we beat, and that is Pitt. We got Pitt
Yeah.
in Pittsburgh.
Yep. Yeah, we do, and we beat them when we went 3-8 2 years ago. That was one of our I think two wins we got in FBS that year, and then it was our only one last year. So we just had their number no matter how bad we are, Ben, no matter how bad we suck. But yeah, I mean they went 7-7 last year, and that was enough to win the coast. So I mean to think about that, I mean it kind of makes you feel like it could be wide open. But I think that they're going to be better than they were last year. They get a lot returning and stuff like that, and I think their defense will actually start improving, which is what Pat Narduzzi is supposed to be a specialist of, but in recent years it hasn't shown.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is funny, 7-7, and they won the Coastal Division. But yeah, no, they're no joke. And in our game against them, they very easily could have won. So it'll likely be a very different game, especially playing away. They're playing at Heinz Field, so don't get the comforts of Kenan Stadium over there.
Right, exactly. And this is interesting too with Pitt because I think you could see a paradigm shift in the way they approach football this year because of, the departures and stuff on their team. Last year they were an offensive line run heavy unit, and now I think offensively they're going to kind of transition more to a passing game. Kenny Pickett, I think is his name, the quarterback. He's back again, and they lost a lot of those offensive linemen and stuff like that. So I think they're going to transition a little bit to more of a pass-heavy team. So I think that'll be a little bit of a change for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'll move on. So the penultimate game of the season, we got FCS Mercer.
Yep. Yeah. Do you know anything about Mercer, Ben?
Dude, I honestly couldn't even tell you where Mercer is. All I know is like that's our senior game. And that like in all likelihood is just a warm up game. Like Mercer's in the FCS, they're an FCS program, but even there, they're not really good. They went 5-6 last season. Their opponents averaged 32.4 points per game. So all signs point to us having like just a good warm up game to go into that last week of the season.
Right. Yeah. I think Mercer's in Georgia. I'm not. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's in Georgia. But yeah, I mean this is going to be our only gimme on this schedule. So
Hmm.
it's very similar to the Western game last year. We've got to win this one. We need to win this one convincingly, obviously, and I think we will. So that's really all there is to say about this one.
Yeah, exactly. But just to check us both on that. So Mercer is in Macon, Georgia. You were right.
Okay. I knew it was either Georgia or maybe it was in it could have been in Florida. I was going to say Georgia though. I knew it was in the southeast.
All right. Well, and then that'll lead us to our last game against NC State. That game did not end well last season with that big fight breaking out. I think I forgot to mention it that I think a couple of our players are suspended for the first half of the game for the South Carolina game for week 1 stemming from that fight back against South Carolina.
Yeah, I think you're right too. And I had just recently thought about that as well. And that's going to obviously be, uh, you know, given the fact that this first game is so crucial to our schedule this year, getting off to a good start. But yeah, I mean, NC State last year, dude. I mean, we competed with them, and we normally do. I mean, they were so much better than us last year, though, that it was more or less just almost satisfying to see us compete that long. Obviously, it wasn't satisfying the way it ended with the fight and stuff, as you mentioned. But NC State, I mean, they're losing. They lost pretty much everything. They lost their quarterback. They lost their running back core. They lost their receiving. I mean, they lost a lot. So, I mean, this is going to be a little bit of a rebuild year for the good old Wolfpack. So I think this is a game that we actually could go into Raleigh and steal.
Yeah, yeah, especially like them losing Ryan Finley, who went in the draft too. I think he went to the Bengals. Like he almost had 4,000 passing yards, 25 touchdowns last season. He was a big part of their offense, and losing him along with their running back, that's going to be a serious loss. So we'll see. We'll have like a really good idea by the end of the season, obviously, what kind of team NC State is, what kind of team we are. But yeah, I could totally see us going in and playing them tough, coming out of Raleigh with the win.
Yeah, I think we can. And depending on how the year goes, we could be favored by depending on how kind of season they have. We don't know what the circumstances are going to be by then. There's a lot of football to be played between now and November 30th. But yeah, I mean, and NC State's defense will be, pretty good like they are, but nothing to rile home about. But I think the offensive rebuild year that I anticipate them having will give us a chance to really go in there and beat them.
Yeah, exactly. We gotta hope for the best. But yeah, that's all 12 games. Again, hopefully we get that 13th game, that bowl game. But that's wishful thinking at this point, Zach. So now that we're at the end of the episode, we've gone through all these games. What is your realistic prediction for our season? And this is, before any games have been played, any points have been scored. What are your thoughts for the season?
Well, Ben, as you know me, and you know how I am with football and stuff, and I have my favorite teams and stuff, but I also am a big, being realistic. And looking at this schedule, I truly think that we have the toughest schedule in the ACC. When you consider the power of our non-conference games, which teams we have to play on the road, and plus having Clemson this year out of the bunch too. I think it could go a lot of different ways, but I think my conclusion is that we're going to either get 5 or 6 wins. I think that we'll either go 6-6 or 5-7, and I think our complete ceiling for this year, would be 8 wins.
Yeah, I mean, really anything can happen. We could have an 8-win season, or we could just drop another egg of the season in Mac Brown's first season with us. But I actually agree with you, and I purposely didn't ask you for your prediction, before we started recording because I wanted to see what you had to say about it. But I think I agree with you. I honestly think that we're going to be right at that 5 or 6 wins going into our last game against NC State. Like I could totally see the NC State game being a win and you get a bowl game. You're in the Cheez-Its Frito Bowl or some obscure bowl.
The Little
But
Caesars Pizza Bowl or something like
yeah,
that.
exactly. But after like some really disappointing seasons recently, like I would take any bowl game. I don't know about you.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, if we win 5 or 6 games, I mean that's a big improvement. And I know that the hype right now for this season makes us feel like that we should be competing for the entire ACC. But I mean, if we're being realistic here, Ben, we're probably not going to beat Clemson. We're probably not even going to compete with Clemson. So, I mean, and outside of them, South Carolina is going to be very, very tough. I don't know if I see us winning that one, unfortunately. I don't really know if I see us beating Miami either. I don't know if I see us beating Wake Forest either on the road. I think we could easily start out 0-3, and we could start out 0-3 having played decent football those first 3 games. And I'm not trying to say we're going to lay an egg and go 0-3. I'm saying we could play good football and go 0-3. That's just the nature of our schedule.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a gauntlet through and through, like any way you look at it. But again, there's like the any given Sunday mentality. We can go into any of these games and win, but at the same time, we can go into any of these games and lose. So
Right.
I'm really hoping for just a 50-50 split here. I think 5 or 6 wins. 5 would be really disappointing, just like barely missing out on a bowl game. Six would be awesome. We're not going to go out. We're not going 11-1. We're not going 10-2. We're not a college football playoff team. But I think if we can just make a bowl game, any bowl game, then that will mean that Mac Brown's first season back on the team will be a success.
I completely agree with that. And we'll take that momentum from a bowl game, hopefully a bowl win, into next year where we get a lot of his recruiting class that he's worked so hard with coming in, and then we can start building those teams up that can really compete for the ACC in the next 2 or 3 years. But I think this year is the definition of a rebuild year. And I know we want to win now, and I want to win now. I mean, heck, Ben, this is our senior year, man. This is the last time we can get in free. So I mean, like, I want us to be, as good as anybody else does. But the realistic nature of it is that it's going to be tough, and 5 or 6 wins would be a big improvement. But I wanted to ask you, obviously, I assume you're giving us the Mercer game, but in your mind, with it being 5 or 6 wins, where are those other 4 or 5 wins coming from for you? Which games?
Okay, I think the games that I feel more confident about, like these are not games that I'm predicting a win necessarily, but I feel like we can win. We can beat Wake Forest, I think. We can beat App State. I think we can beat Georgia Tech. I think we can beat Duke. I think obviously we can beat Mercer. We can beat Pitt. That's 6 right there. And then, the rest of the games are like NC State, Virginia, Virginia Tech. Those are tough games, but we might be able to win those. So say we take one of those tough games and say we slip on one of these easier games, like I still think we can go home with 5 or 6 wins realistically.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I was doing Mercer as the one gimme for that one win, of course, and then I was going to give us Pittsburgh, Duke being 3 wins there, and then I also think we're going to beat Georgia Tech to give us 4. Not This is obviously not in order, but Georgia Tech to give us 4, and then I think we'll beat App State to give us 5, and then if we go 5 and 7, I think that's who we would beat. But if we were to get that 6th win, I think it would be in Raleigh against NC State.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be cool though? Like becoming bowl eligible like last week, especially against NC State.
Yep, to ruin their season, hopefully, and like maybe knock them out of a bowl game or something. That would just be poetic justice.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, they can't stand up to us at all in basketball. So of course the fans love to remind us who's the better team right now in football. So that'd be nice to stick it to them there.
Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, we haven't had success with them, I think, in 2 or 3 years now. So it'd be nice to get back in the win column there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it'll be really nice to watch some Carolina football in like December that actually like some stakes to them.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. But yeah, man. I mean, that's basically the schedule right there, and that's kind of what I think of it. That's my educated quote unquote opinion for what I from what I see and what I've read and the rosters I look at and everything. So I hope I'm wrong from the perspective that I hope we win more than 5 or 6 games, but that's just where I think this team is going to land this year.
Yeah, and I mean, you got to keep in mind that, injuries, suspensions, like so many things can happen over the season that changes the outlook by the time we get to October, November, and December. But yeah, as far as it's looking right now, Carolina can have a bounce back season. So I hope you guys all enjoyed, our, again, quote unquote, opinions on this schedule. Of course, we're going to have an episode dedicated to each of these games once football season actually starts, where we can actually really break down what, the players on each side are doing and probably give a more up-to-date opinion and analysis on who we think is going to win that game. But yeah, I'm super excited for this season, Zach.
Yeah, me too. And we had foreshadowed back in the spring, Ben, how we were going to talk about some matchups and stuff and how our roster matches up with their roster at particular positions and stuff like that. And, we'll do all that with each individual team that we play throughout the season so we can give you guys an idea of, personnel on personnel as opposed to just outlooks of the teams.
Yeah, exactly. So that's about all we have for this episode. We'll see you guys in 2 more weeks. Right, Zach?
Yeah, 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be recording the episode that will be strictly South Carolina. So look out for that in about 2 weeks and a day or two. And that episode will be, week 1 of the season, and we will get full in depth with South Carolina before we go to Charlotte.
Yeah, I can't believe that's coming up so soon. But for me and Zach here at the Heel Deal podcast, thank you guys for listening. We're both super excited for an awesome season 2. So we will catch you guys next time. But Zach, as always, what's the saying?
Yep, thanks guys as always. And as you alluded to, Ben, go to Hell Duke.